I didn't expect to still be here. 38 years old, and I'm sitting in the same glass-walled conference room where I've spent the last 12 Thanksgivings watching my colleagues get promoted while I get recognized for my dedication and a 3% raise. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd taken this job at Morrison and Tate straight out of grad school because it was stable. Because my mother said practicality over passion, and my father nodded along while scrolling through his phone. Because I'd spent my entire life being the reliable one, the daughter who showed up, the employee who never complained, the woman who stayed in her lane. And 12 years later, I was still in my lane, still reliable, still invisible. Lauren? Earth to Lauren? I blinked. Andrew Scott, my department head, was looking at me with that practice smile he used when he was about to deliver bad news. He'd been my boss for 5 years, and somewhere along the way, I'd let myself believe the late nights and the shared coffee runs and the way he always remembered my birthday meant something more. God, how pathetic was that? Sorry, I said, straightening in my chair, just reviewing the quarterly projections in my head. Always the overachiever, Samantha Blake, my so-called colleague, said from across the table. Her smile was razor thin. You know, most of us can actually unplug during reviews, but you're probably running spreadsheets in your dreams. I didn't respond. Samantha had been making comments like that for 6 years, ever since she'd joined the firm as Andrew's special hire. Her father was on the board, her mother ran a hedge fund. Her only qualification was the ability to look good in a suit and laugh at Andrew's jokes a beat too late. They made a beautiful pair, the two of them, tall, polished, perfectly styled. Every department meeting, they sat next to each other like they were running some kind of exclusive club that I'd never be invited to. Andrew cleared his throat. So, Lauren, the reason I called you in today. I knew what was coming. I'd seen the promotion list. Samantha's name was on it, along with 3 other people who'd been at the firm half as long as I had. My name wasn't. We're restructuring the cybersecurity division, Andrew said, sliding a folder across the table. Corporate's been pushing for more aggressive growth, and we need fresh energy in leadership positions. I opened the folder. Inside was my severance package, 6 months salary, generous by corporate standards, with a non-disclosure agreement attached. We're not letting you go, Andrew said quickly, holding up his hands. We're offering you a transition, a consultant role, part-time, flexible, so you can focus on whatever you want to focus on. You're demoting me. I prefer to think of it as repositioning. I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in 5 years. He was still handsome, still charming, still the kind of man who could sell ice to Eskimos with that easy smile. But there was something in his eyes today, something I'd only glimpsed in passing before, on days when he thought I wasn't looking. Annoyance, disgust. The same way he looked at the sandwich vendors on the street corner. I see, I said. My voice was steady. I'd learned to keep it steady a long time ago. Samantha leaned forward, her smile widening. It's really a great opportunity, Lauren. Think of all the free time you'll have. Maybe take up a hobby, painting or knitting or whatever it is people do when they're not in the office. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, but I didn't let it reach my face. I'd learned that lesson too, the hard way, years ago, in front of people who'd used my emotions against me. I took a breath and looked at Andrew. I'll need to review the terms. Of course, he said, clearly relieved. Take all the time you need, but we'd like an answer by Friday. The meeting ended. I gathered my things and walked out, my heels clicking against the polished floors. The hallway felt longer than usual. Every step felt like a countdown. 12 years. 12 years of working my way up from junior analyst to senior project lead. 12 years of overnights and weekends and saying yes when I meant no. And this is how it ends? I pushed through the emergency exit and stepped out onto the fire escape. The city stretched out below me, hundreds of buildings, thousands of windows, millions of people who'd never know my name. For a moment, I let myself feel it. The anger, the humiliation, the slow, grinding realization that I'd never been valued. Not by the firm, not by Andrew, not by anyone I'd ever tried to impress. But then I thought about what I told myself all those years ago when I'd first started at Morrison and Tate. The promise I'd made in my tiny studio apartment with no furniture and barely any savings. I'll prove them wrong. I'll build something they can't take away. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. 3 missed calls from my mother, a text from my sister asking if I was finally coming home for Thanksgiving this year, and a voicemail from Andrew, left 2 minutes after the meeting ended. Lauren, hey, I just wanted to say, I really do think this is the best decision for everyone. I know it's a shock, but you'll see. You'll be so much happier. I deleted it. Then I typed out a single message to my sister. Yes, I'm coming home. 6 days later, I was standing in the foyer of my parents' house, watching the same Thanksgiving ritual I'd been watching for 40 years. My mother was in the kitchen, barking orders at my father. My brother, Patrick, was on the couch with his wife, scrolling through real estate listings on his phone and complaining about interest rates. My cousins were arguing in the dining room about something that didn't matter. And I was standing in the corner, holding a glass of white wine I didn't want, waiting for someone to notice I'd arrived. Lauren, you came. That was my mother. She emerged from the kitchen with flour on her apron and a look of genuine surprise on her face. I almost didn't believe it when you said you would. Hi, Mom. She hugged me, and I let her. IT was easier than explaining why I'd stayed away, why I'd made excuses every year since I left for New York, why I'd built an entire life, an entire empire, even, in a city they'd never visit and never understand. You look tired, she said, pulling back to study my face. Are you eating properly? Your job is too stressful, I told you. Working at that big company, always running around. I'm fine, Mom. Well, you don't look fine. You look thin. She patted my arm and turned to the rest of the family. Everyone, Lauren's here. Finally. The room shifted. My brother looked up from his phone, gave me a brief nod, and went back to scrolling. My sister-in-law offered a polite smile. My cousins muttered half-hearted hellos. They'd forgotten about me in under 5 seconds. I should have been hurt. Maybe I was. But mostly, I felt nothing. That familiar numbness that came from being the family's invisible daughter. The one who'd always been overshadowed by Patrick's charm, Patrick's sports career, Patrick's everything. And then Patrick spoke. So, he said, not looking up from his phone, still working at that bank. Or, did you finally get a real job? I'm in cybersecurity, I said, for the millionth time. Right, computers, good for you. He clicked his tongue. I still think you should have gone into something with more potential. Real estate's where the money is. Speaking of which, he finally looked up, his eyes lighting up. We should talk about that later. I've got this amazing opportunity. I knew exactly where this was going. Patrick had been about to close on some entrepreneurial venture for the past decade. He'd been fired from 3 jobs, run through 2 inheritances, and still managed to convince everyone that his next scheme would finally hit big. Not me. Not anymore. But I nodded because that was what I did. That was what I'd always done. Nod and smile and wait for the conversation to move on. And then my mother called dinner. The table was set for 12. I was at the far end, as usual, pushed down to the seats closest to the kitchen, where the heat from the oven made your forehead sweat, and the noise from the dishwasher drowned out any attempt at conversation. Andrew Scott was here. Because of course he was. He'd been Patrick's friendly investment consultant for years, and somehow he'd become part of the family. I watched him from across the table, laughing at something my mother said, his hand resting casually on the back of Samantha's chair. She'd come with him, naturally, wearing a silk dress that cost more than my monthly rent, and smiling at everyone like she was doing them a favor by being here. Samantha's eyes found mine across the table. She raised an eyebrow, a small smirk playing at her lips. Lauren, she called out. I'm so glad you made it. I was telling Andrew just the other day, it's so hard to get you out of New York. Always so dedicated to your work. Someone has to be, I said. The table went quiet. Excuse me? Andrew looked at me with that familiar mix of irritation and condescension. I said, someone has to be dedicated to their work. I smiled, the same smile I'd been practicing for 12 years. Isn't that right, Andrew? You always used to say that dedication was the most important quality in an employee. The color drained from his face, just slightly, just enough for me to notice. Samantha jumped in, laughing. Oh, Lauren, you and your dry humor. Andrew, remember when she used to make jokes during presentations? We always found them so charming. We did, Andrew said, forcing a smile. Very charming. I felt the familiar twist in my stomach, the one that had been there since college, since high school, since the first time I'd watched someone I cared about treat me like an afterthought. Dedication. Charming. Always the same 2 words they used to describe me. Never brilliant. Never innovative. Never essential. I took a sip of my wine and waited. After dinner, we gathered in the living room for the annual gift exchange, a tradition my mother insisted on, though she always made sure everyone got something except me. I'd stopped being surprised years ago. This year, though, something was different. My mother had a small package in her hands, wrapped in shiny gold paper. She handed it to Patrick first, beaming. Go ahead, dear. Open it. He tore it open with theatrical flair, pulling out a set of keys. An investment property, my mother announced, clapping her hands. Your father, and I wanted to help you get started. 0.3 units in a great neighborhood. A little fixer-upper, but we know you'll make it into something beautiful. Patrick's wife gasped. My cousins clapped. Andrew offered a performative nod of approval. I kept my face neutral. Thank you, Mom, Patrick said, his voice thick with fake emotion. This means everything. I promise I'll make you proud. There's more, my father said, gesturing to the table. There's gifts for everyone. Go ahead. And they went one by one, my sister-in-law, my cousins, my father's business partners. They all received generous presents, each one more expensive than the last. And when they were done, there was nothing left. Lauren, my mother looked at me, her eyebrows knitting together. Did you bring something? We can always exchange gifts after dinner. I looked at the table, the empty space where my present should have been. It's okay, I said. I didn't expect anything. Patrick snorted. Come on, Lauren. Don't be like that. It's just presents. You're an adult. You can buy your own stuff. Patrick, my mother said weakly. Look, he shrugged. All I'm saying is if you needed something, you should have said. But you're always so independent. Always doing your own thing. Can't even call your own mother on her birthday. I felt the stares around the room. Andrew's smirk. Samantha's satisfaction. And suddenly, something in me snapped. I bought something for myself. Actually, I said, my voice calm and clear. I pulled out my keys, the shiny, modern keys to the apartment I'd spent 12 years building toward. Not just the apartment, but everything it represented, the savings accounts. The investment portfolio, the company no one knew I'd been quietly building for 5 years. I dropped them on the table. Paid off 2 months ago. Brownstone in Brooklyn. Full ownership. No mortgage. Silence. Patrick's mouth opened, then closed. Andrew's smirk vanished. My mother looked at the keys, then at me. That's a joke, right? No joke, I said, and the word felt like a release. 5 years of working nights and weekends, building my own cybersecurity firm while I worked for Morrison and Tate. And I just signed a contract worth $18 million. The room didn't just go quiet, it went dead. Then Samantha laughed. Okay, this is a bit. This is a really weird bit, Lauren. It's not a bit. I looked around the table, taking in every frozen face. You don't know what I've been doing because you never asked. You never cared. You thought I was still that girl who couldn't get a date to prom. The one who'd just smile and take the leftovers. I stood up, and for the first time, I felt like I was standing above them. I'm not that girl anymore. I walked out of the living room, through the kitchen, and out the front door. I didn't look back. The drive back to New York was 6 hours of silence. Not the comfortable kind. The kind where every mile felt like a withdrawal, one step further from the people who'd spent 40 years telling me I wasn't enough, and one step closer to the life I'd built without them. I didn't cry. I'd stopped crying about my family a long time ago, but my hands were shaking on the steering wheel, and I had to pull over twice just to breathe. The first time, I sat in a rest stop parking lot and watched a family pile out of a minivan. Dad, mom, 3 kids, a golden retriever. They were laughing about something, probably nothing important, and I felt this ache in my chest that I couldn't name. That was supposed to be us. But it never was. The second time, I called my sister, Allison. Not because I expected her to say anything helpful, but because I needed to hear a voice that wasn't my own. Lauren? She sounded surprised. Everything okay? You left so fast. I'm fine. Mom's been crying all evening. She says you threw keys at her and walked out. I didn't throw anything. I showed her my keys. There's a difference. Allison was quiet for a moment. She was the only one in the family who'd ever tried to understand me, the only one who'd asked once if I was okay and meant it. But she was also married to a man who thought emotional support meant offering unsolicited advice, and she'd learned to keep her head down. Look, she said finally, I know they're a lot. I know, but they're still our parents. And Patrick, she hesitated. Patrick's just Patrick. He's always been insecure about you. Insecure about me? He's 39, Allie. He's had 3 decades to figure his life out, and he still thinks I owe him something. He just wants to be successful like you. I'm not successful because of anything he did. I'm successful despite him, despite all of them. The words came out harsher than I'd intended, and I heard Allison flinch on the other end. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. I didn't mean to. No, it's okay. You're right. She sighed. I hate seeing you alone all the time. You're always so self-sufficient. Like you don't need anyone. Maybe I don't. But I didn't say that. I said goodbye and hung up, and then I drove the rest of the way home in silence. The brownstone was dark when I arrived, but the doorman recognized me and waved me through with a knowing smile. It was my favorite part of the building, the part where people knew who I was without needing a reminder. I took the elevator up to the 4th floor and unlocked the door to my apartment. 1,500 square feet of carefully curated space, exposed brick, hardwood floors, a kitchen that cost more than my parents' house. I'd spent years working toward this, and sometimes, when I walked through the door at night, I still couldn't believe it was mine. Tonight, though, it felt different. Tonight, it felt like a fortress. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the couch, staring at the wall. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably Allison again, or maybe my mother, trying to guilt me into coming back. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again. And again. And again. Finally, I pulled it out and looked at the screen. Messages 12 from unknown number. I opened them. Unknown number, 7:43 p.m. Lauren, it's Andrew. Your mother gave me your number. I just want to talk. Unknown number, 8:02 p.m. I know you're upset about the meeting. I shouldn't have done it the way I did, but I think we can work something out. Unknown number, 8:18 p.m. Look, I know about your firm. I did some research. That contract you mentioned, 18 million. That's not a joke, is it? Unknown number, 8:35 p.m. Please, just call me. We can work together on this. I have resources, connections, things you could really use. I felt the familiar coil of anger tightening in my chest. Not a joke. No, it wasn't a joke at all. The 18 million contract was real, a partnership with a European tech firm that wanted my cybersecurity platform for their global infrastructure. It had taken me 5 years to build the system, 3 years to get it to market, and 8 months of negotiations to close the deal. And now Andrew, the man who demoted me, who treated me like an inconvenience for half a decade, wanted to work together. The audacity. I typed out a reply. Lauren, 9:12 p.m. I'm not interested in working with you. Find another partner. Then I blocked his number and went to bed. But the harassment didn't stop. For the next week, I got calls from my parents, my brother, my cousins, and even a few people I barely remembered from Thanksgiving dinner. They all had the same script. Lauren, you need to come back. You're being selfish. Patrick has an amazing opportunity. He just needs a small investment. 20,000. That's nothing for someone like you. Don't you care about your family? I stopped answering my phone. I turned off my notifications, set my do not disturb to permanent, and threw myself into work. The firm, Blake Security Solutions, named after no one but myself, was growing faster than I'd ever expected. We just hired 3 new engineers, and our platform was being integrated into some of the biggest financial institutions in North America. The 18 million contract was just the beginning. But the family didn't see that. They only saw the money. And on the 8th day, they showed up. I was in my home office, reviewing code, when my doorman buzzed. Ms. Blake, there's Mr. Patrick Blake here to see you. He says he's your brother. I froze. Tell him I'm not available. He says it's an emergency. I could feel my heart rate climbing. The same reaction I'd had as a kid, when Patrick would corner me in the hallway and demand I do his homework. The same desperate scramble to make myself small. No, not anymore. Let him up. 2 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Patrick standing in the hallway, looking uncomfortable in a cheap suit and holding a manila folder. Lauren. He smiled, that same easy smile that had gotten him out of trouble 100 times. Thanks for seeing me. I didn't invite you here. You showed up. I came to give you a chance. He stepped inside without waiting for permission, looking around my apartment with barely concealed envy. Nice place. You really did well for yourself. Patrick, what do you want? I want to talk about business. He set the folder on my kitchen counter. I've got a deal, a real one this time, that a property development project in Brooklyn, government-backed, low risk, huge returns. All I need is a little seed money to get started. He opened the folder and spread out glossy photos of an abandoned warehouse. 20,000, he said. That's all I'm asking. Patrick, I know you're upset about Thanksgiving. I know you think we don't respect you, but this is different. This is your chance to be part of something great, to be part of the family. I looked at the photos, at his eager, hopeful face. He means it. He really believes this is a good idea. But he's wrong. Show me the financials, I said. His expression flickered. The what? The financials, the projections, the permits, the contracts. I crossed my arms. If this is a government-backed deal, you should have all of that. Show it to me. Lauren, come on. If you can't show me the paperwork, you don't have a deal. You have an idea, and ideas are cheap. Patrick's face went red. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think because you made some money, you can look down on me? I'm not looking down on you. I'm asking you to do your homework. It's called due diligence. You should try it sometime. This is a family investment. I'm not your investor, Patrick. I'm your sister. The one you spent every holiday making fun of. The one you told to get a real job at every family dinner. I stepped closer and I knew my voice was shaking, but I didn't care. You don't get to show up here with a shiny folder and pretend you care about me now that I'm worth something. Patrick stared at me, his jaw tight. You're going to regret this, he said. I've regretted a lot of things in my life. This isn't going to be one of them. He grabbed his folder and stormed out. And I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. But Patrick wasn't the only one who came calling. 3 weeks later, I got an email from Andrew sent to my work address, which meant he'd gone through corporate channels to find me. Subject: urgent. We need to talk. 2:15 p.m. I almost deleted it, but something made me open it. Lauren, I know you're angry. I get it. I handled things badly at Morrison and Tate, but what I'm offering now is different. I've left Morrison and Tate. I'm starting my own consultancy, and I want you to be my first partner. That I've been looking at the cybersecurity market and your platform. It's exactly what I need. We could take this global. I'm willing to offer you a 50% stake in the company, plus a signing bonus of $500,000. All you have to do is agree to work with me. Think about it. I'll wait for your answer. Andrew. I stared at the email for a long time. 50%. $500,000. All I had to do was forgive him, trust him, give him access to everything I built. I thought about all those late nights in the office. All those conversations where he talked about his vision, his future, his potential. The way he looked at me like I was a tool. Useful, but replaceable. And I thought about Samantha and the promotion I hadn't gotten and the severance package that was supposed to make up for a decade of broken promises. I typed my reply. Andrew, you don't get to steal my work and then ask me to partner with you. The platform you saw at Morrison and Tate, the one I built, is not for sale. It's not for partnership. It's mine, and I'm taking it to market alone. I suggest you find another way to make your fortune. This one is already taken. Lauren. I hit send, and I knew it was final. The months that followed were the best of my life. Blake Security Solutions grew faster than I'd ever imagined. We landed another major contract, this time with the federal government, and I found myself leading a team of 40 engineers, all of whom looked at me like I was some kind of genius. I wasn't a genius. I was just someone who'd learned to work twice as hard as everyone else because she'd never been given anything for free. But I didn't tell them that. I just showed up, did the work, and proved every single person who'd ever doubted me wrong. And then on a cold Tuesday in February, I got a call from my mother, Lauren. Her voice was quiet, softer than I'd ever heard it. It's your father. He's in the hospital. I felt my heart drop. What happened? Heart attack. He's stable now, but the doctor said, they said if we'd waited any longer, it would have been worse. She paused, and I could hear her crying. He keeps asking for you. Please, Lauren. Please come home. I thought about the last time I'd seen my father, the way he'd sat at the dinner table, nodding along as Patrick opened his investment property gift, never once looking in my direction. He never fought for me. He never even noticed. But he was my father. And somewhere, buried under all the anger and disappointment, I still wanted him to be proud of me. I'll be there tomorrow, I said. The hospital was cold and sterile, and my father looked small in his bed, smaller than I remembered. He opened his eyes when I walked in, and for a moment, I thought he might not recognize me. Lauren, he smiled, and it broke something in my chest. You came? Of course I came. I pulled up a chair and sat beside him. My mother hovered in the background, wringing her hands. Your mother told me about your company, my father said, about the contracts, the money. It's not about the money, Dad. No, he shook his head slowly. It's about what you did with it. I always knew you were smart. Smarter than me. Smarter than Patrick. That's for sure. I blinked. He'd never said anything like that before. I should have told you, he continued. All those years. I should have told you I was proud. You never. I know. He closed his eyes. I thought if I pushed Patrick harder, he'd step up. He was the firstborn. He was supposed to carry the family name. But you were always the one who was going to make something of yourself that I just didn't know how to say it. I didn't know what to say either. The silence stretched between us. Then my mother stepped forward. There's something else, Lauren. She looked at my father, then back at me. Patrick took out loans against his share of the property we gave him. He gambled them away in some stock scheme. He lost everything. The property, the money, everything. And now I realized they were trying to save him again. Please, my mother said, her voice cracking. Please help him. He's your brother. I felt the familiar weight of their expectations pressing down on me. The good daughter. The one who always came through. I could give them the money. It would be easy. Maybe $500,000. Enough to keep Patrick afloat while he figured things out. It wouldn't even make a dent in my savings. But then I thought about all the years of being invisible. All the years of watching Patrick get everything while I got nothing. And I thought about the version of me who'd walked out of that Thanksgiving dinner, determined never to be treated like an afterthought again. No, I said quietly. My mother's face crumpled. Lauren. No, I'm done being your safety net. I'm done watching you sacrifice everything for Patrick while I get nothing. I built something to me. And I'm not going to let you tear it down because he made bad choices. It's not like that. It is exactly like that. I stood up. I love you, Mom, and I love Dad, but I can't do this anymore, and I can't keep being the one you turn to when everything else falls apart. I'm not going to save him. I'm sorry, Lauren. I'm sorry we didn't. Stop. I held up a hand. I don't want apologies. I don't want promises. I just want you to stop asking. I walked out of the hospital room, and this time, I didn't look back. The hospital parking lot was cold and dark, and I sat in my car for 10 minutes before I could start the engine. I wasn't crying. I'd done that years ago, in a studio apartment with no furniture and a stack of rejection letters from firms that didn't think I was good enough. I'd learned that tears didn't change anything. They just made your eyes puffy and your voice shaky. But my hands were shaking now, not from sadness, from something else. Relief. I'd said no. I'd actually said no. For the first time in 40 years, I'd walked away from my family without apologizing, without compromising, without offering to fix everything. I started the car and drove home. The next morning, I woke up to a voicemail from my mother. Lauren, please call me. Your father is asking about you. He's upset. He doesn't understand why you left so quickly. We're all worried. I deleted it. Then I got an email from Patrick. Subject, you're making a mistake. 8:15 a.m. Lauren, I know you think you're being strong, but you're not. You're just being cruel. Mom and Dad are devastated. They gave you everything, and you're throwing it back in their faces. I'm not asking for a handout. I'm asking for a loan. I'll pay you back. I swear it. But if you don't help me now, I'm going to lose everything. My marriage, my reputation, everything. Is that what you want? I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed my reply. Patrick, what I want is for you to take responsibility for your own life. I built mine. You can build yours. Stop asking me to save you. I hit send and didn't look back. But Patrick didn't stop. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a lawyer. My lawyer, actually, the one I'd hired to handle my contracts. Miss Blake, we've received a letter from a firm representing your brother. He's threatening to sue you for emotional distress and financial abandonment. He claims you made promises of financial support that you've now withdrawn. I almost laughed. On what grounds? He's alleging that your parents' gift to him at Thanksgiving was contingent on your family's collective support, and that your refusal to participate has caused him irreparable harm. That's ridiculous. Ridiculous, yes. But he's hired a very aggressive attorney. I recommend we respond with a countersuit for harassment. I thought about it. A countersuit would mean going to court. It would mean media attention. It would mean dragging my family's dysfunction into the public eye. But it would also mean finally drawing a line they couldn't cross. Let's do it, I said. The countersuit made the news. Not the front page, but the business section, and then the local papers, and then a few online blogs. Self-made cybersecurity mogul sues brother for harassment. I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't regret it either. The articles painted a picture of a successful woman being targeted by a jealous sibling, and for once, the public was on my side. Strangers emailed me to say they'd been through the same thing. My company stock went up. And my mother called me, screaming. How could you do this? How could you humiliate your own brother like this? He's going to be a laughingstock. Do you have any idea what people are saying? I let her yell. When she finally stopped, I said, I'm not going to let him drag me down, Mom, but I'm not going to let any of you drag me down. I've spent my whole life being invisible. Now you see me. And you don't get to control me anymore. You're not the child I raised. No, I agreed. I'm not. I hung up and went back to work. That Friday, I got an unexpected visit. Andrew Scott was standing outside my office building, holding a folder and looking nervous. Lauren, please. Just 5 minutes. I had a meeting in 20 minutes, but I took the bait. You've got 2. He followed me into the lobby, and we stood in a quiet corner near the elevators. I've been thinking about your platform, he said. The one you built at Morrison and Tate. I told you. I know you said it's not for sale, but I need you to understand something. He leaned in, lowering his voice. Samantha is trying to build a competing product. She's been poaching engineers from your team. She's got a backer, a venture firm that wants to undercut your price and drive you out of the market. I felt a chill run down my spine. Why are you telling me this? Because she's not going to stop. She's already filed for patents on some of the algorithms you developed. She's claiming they were part of her work at Morrison and Tate. That's impossible. I developed those algorithms on my own time. I know, but she's got the CEO on her side and a legal team and a pile of money. He held out the folder. This is everything I could find, and I'm sorry I didn't do this earlier. I was scared of her. I took the folder and opened it. Inside were emails, timelines, and internal memos documenting Samantha's attempts to claim my work as her own. I looked at Andrew. Why now? Because I realized, he paused, his voice catching. I realized I've been a coward my whole life. I let my father's connections run my career. I let Samantha manipulate me. And I let you go because I couldn't admit that you were better than me. I didn't say anything. I just held the folder. Help me, he said. Help me fix this. I'll testify. I'll do whatever it takes. I thought about all the years I'd spent wanting him to notice me, all the years I'd convinced myself that his approval would matter. And now, standing in front of me, he was offering it, finally, desperately. But I didn't need it anymore. I'll take this to my legal team, I said. If you're serious, we'll talk. But I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for me. He nodded, and I saw something in his eyes, not defeat, but understanding. Thank you, he said. I walked into my meeting and closed the door behind me. The legal battle with Samantha took 6 months. 6 months of depositions, evidence gathering, and sleepless nights. My team worked tirelessly, and Andrew's testimony was the final nail in her coffin. She settled out of court, paid a substantial fine, and was quietly let go from Morrison and Tate. I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted. But I also felt free. Patrick's countersuit was dismissed. He'd overplayed his hand, and the judge ruled that his claims were baseless. He was ordered to pay my legal fees, and I never heard from him again. My parents called occasionally. I let them leave voicemails, but I didn't return them. My father sent a letter, handwritten, with shaky cursive, apologizing for the way he treated me. I was wrong, Lauren. I let your mother dictate everything, and I didn't have the courage to stand up for you. I'm proud of you. I always was. I kept the letter in my desk drawer. I didn't reply. But I didn't throw it away either. A year after the Thanksgiving dinner, I attended a cybersecurity conference in Chicago. I was the keynote speaker, the first woman to hold that position in the conference's 20-year history. My platform had become the industry standard, and my company was valued at over $1 billion. I walked onto the stage in a simple black dress and looked out at the crowd of thousands. They were all there for me. Not for Andrew. Not for Patrick. Not for my mother. For me. I gave my speech, answered questions, and shook hands with investors who treated me like a celebrity. And at the end of the night, I sat at the bar with a glass of wine, watching the crowd thin out. You're hard to get a word with. I turned. A man in his early 40s, dark hair, kind eyes, a worn leather jacket, was standing next to me. You know who I am, I said. Everyone knows who you are. He smiled. I'm Daniel. I was in the audience. Your talk about autonomous network defense was brilliant. Thank you. He ordered a drink and sat down. I'm a software engineer, technically, work for a smaller firm, but I've been following your work for years. I think what you did, building that system from scratch, fighting off the patent trolls, it's inspiring. I looked at him. He wasn't trying to sell me anything. He wasn't name dropping or pitching a deal. He was just talking. Thank you, I said again, and this time I meant it. We talked for an hour. About algorithms, about burnout, about the importance of sleep, and the joy of a well-written code. He didn't mention my family. He didn't mention my money. He just saw me. At midnight, he stood up. I should let you go, but if you're ever in town again, I'd love to continue this conversation. He handed me his card, and I took it. The next day, I flew home, but I thought about him on the plane. And for the first time in years, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Hope. 3 months later, Daniel moved to New York. We took it slow, dinners, walks in the park, late-night phone calls about nothing important. He never pushed. He never asked for anything. He was the first person in my adult life who never wanted to take something from me. He was the first person who just wanted me. On our 1-year anniversary, Daniel took me to the top of the building I'd bought all those years ago, the brownstone in Brooklyn. We stood on the rooftop, looking out over the city. I love you, he said, not because of what you have, but because of what you built, because of who you are. I felt tears in my eyes, the first tears I'd cried in years that weren't born of frustration or pain. I love you too, I said. And for the first time, I believed it. My mother called on my birthday, 6 months later. Lauren, I just wanted to say, she hesitated. Your father and I are proud of you. We're sorry we didn't show it. Thank you, Mom. I heard you're seeing someone. A good man. He is. I hope you're happy. She paused. I hope you can forgive us someday. I thought about it. Forgiving them wouldn't change the past. It wouldn't undo the years of neglect or the constant pressure to be someone I wasn't. But it would free me. I'm working on it, I said. That night, Daniel and I sat on my balcony, watching the stars. What do you think about when you look at all this? He asked. I think about how far I've come, I said. I think about the people who told me I couldn't do it, and then I think about how they were wrong. He smiled. They were wrong. I know. I leaned into him. I know.